Hello, my name is Ann Baker. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Adaptiva, the autonomous endpoint management company. I am happy to be joined by our guest today, Michael Glyer from the product management team at our partner CrowdStrike. Thanks for being here today, Michael.
Absolutely. And thanks for the kind introduction. Yep, my name is Mike Glyer, and I'm a product manager here at CrowdStrike. I've been here about 2 years, and I work particularly on the exposure management product area.
Great. Yeah, and to provide a little background for the audience who's joining us, Adaptiva announced earlier in 2024 the launch of One-Site Patch for CrowdStrike. It's an automated patch management solution that enables organizations to automatically detect vulnerabilities and then rapidly remediate them at scale. It supports automated patching for operating systems, over 1,600 different third-party applications, drivers, BIOS, and more. And to do this, the team at Adaptiva worked closely with CrowdStrike to integrate our product, our One-Site Patch product, with the CrowdStrike Falcon Exposure Management portion of the Falcon platform. So, Michael, with that background in mind, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what is Falcon Exposure Management and how does it fit into the Falcon platform?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing to do would probably be to talk a little bit about how we, CrowdStrike, see the area of exposure management. So we think of exposure management as sort of an evolution of vulnerability management. And the idea is that it is both broader from a asset coverage perspective, as well as deeper in the sense that we're able to, and we do look at more broadly exposures and not just CVEs. So things like misconfigurations and other things that could expose a customer to risk all fit under this umbrella of exposure management. And then for Falcon Exposure Management, what we've done is we've brought together the capabilities of multiple different areas within the platform, all under the proactive security heading, and use that to make sure that we can cover all types of risks across what has been a very expanding attack surface over the years.
Yeah, the attack surface is definitely expanding. Risks are coming in from a number of different directions. I think one of the exciting things about this partnership is that Adaptiva can take in all that real-time exposure insights that CrowdStrike's providing from your expert AI, predictive vulnerability prioritization data, and let then the IT and security teams determine the patching rules and strategies they want for each type of prioritization and classification. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about how Falcon Exposure Management prioritizes vulnerabilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are really two sides to that coin. There's both the prioritization and contextualization of any particular vulnerability. And that's where what you referenced earlier, this concept of expert AI. And what expert AI is it's a AI and machine learning model that takes data into account and is dynamic, right? Unlike CVSS, which is a static score and never changes no matter what has happened in the life of that vulnerability. When you're talking about a predictive scoring system, which is what expert AI is, we are not only taking into account information that comes in. For example, if a vulnerability all of a sudden through our vulnerability intelligence, we find that it's being exploited in the wild, the expert AI severity rating is going to change dynamically. And so you can really focus on what's important. The other side of that coin is the kind of environmental contextualization that's really important when it comes to intelligently prioritizing vulnerabilities. We've got a few things in that area that are really powerful. The first is because of the fact that exposure management includes a capability to do external attack surface management, we are able to identify which Falcon hosts are actually exposed to the internet. And that's kind of one of the number one mechanisms that most organizations do and should use when it comes to patch prioritization. We also have a number of other capabilities, including a rules engine that users and customers can use to create criticality rules for their various business criticality rules for their various different assets. And then finally, we are using an AI model to also predict the role of an asset. So things like whether something is a web server or it is a jump host. All of those things together really allow our users to take that information and focus on the vulnerabilities that matter, because you're never going to patch every single thing.
So things like the criticality factor, AI, those all clearly help differentiate you in the marketplace. And I know there's a number of vulnerability management solutions out there. What do you think makes Falcon Exposure Management different from some of those other VM solutions that are out there today?
Another great question. I think that the way we think about it, it all starts with the agent, right? Because our vulnerability management doesn't require any additional installation. If you're running the Falcon agent on one of your machines, you have vulnerability management happening automatically. And the lower kind of administrative bandwidth that allows for our users means that they have time to spend on other kind of higher priority or higher value tasks, because they're not doing as much in the kind of administrative world. I think the other thing, and I touched on it briefly as well, is because of our ability to pair that sensor data with the internet scan data that we have, being able to identify which of those hosts are exposed to the internet is a really powerful and unique capability within the suite of tools that makes up exposure management.
And you talked a bit about Expert AI and the data it's providing. We've certainly seen it really helps us give our customers the ability to get much more granular in their risk assessment. How do you feel the data that Expert AI is providing is different from other risk scores like CVSS?
Yeah, again, we talked a little bit about this before, but I think the two things that you have to pair that makes Expert AI really valuable is an AI model that really does a good job of predicting exploitation, but you have to have an input of really, really strong vulnerability intelligence to know what's being exploited. While there are public sources like the CISA known exploited vulnerabilities list, or even other public sources that note which vulnerabilities are being publicly exploited, because CrowdStrike, as a part of our day-to-day business, we are in those kind of incident response kinds of situations, as well as with Falcon Overwatch, pulling in that data there as well. We have a ton of first-party information about what's being exploited. And so that not only affects the Expert AI score directly, it also indirectly affects the score, because we're able to use that data to find which kinds of applications or operating systems are more likely to be exploited, which then even increases the power of our predictive model.
We've talked a bit now about that predictive model, that front-end discovery and assessment and prioritization of the vulnerabilities. Now let's talk about sort of the second half. After you've figured out all the vulnerabilities that you do have and the prioritization of them, how do you patch them? How do you remediate them? I know Gartner estimates that it's, I think, fewer than 60% of devices are patched within 14 days of a patch being released. And in many cases, it takes a month or more to patch. And so that can be really challenging. So what's CrowdStrike seeing regarding threats from unpatched vulnerabilities? Why is patching so important?
Yeah, another great question. I think when you think about the landscape of exploitation and breaches, it really lands in two categories. There is the credential and phishing-based attacks, and then there's the other equally important side of the coin, and that is people using vulnerabilities to make that initial entry into a network and then use those vulnerabilities. In the Global Threat Report, one of the things that was really noted as a very important area that this is happening in is unmanaged or kind of out of scope network devices that are frequently having vulnerabilities on them and just aren't part of that regular, consistent patching cycle. And that really kind of exposes those organizations to pretty serious risk.
Yeah, there's some scary numbers out there. I think last year there were over 26,000 vulnerabilities that were disclosed, and mean time to exploit was somewhere around 7 days. And some of those, I think 25% of the high risk vulnerabilities were exploited the same day they were published. So those are, when you're talking about risk, that's for someone who's risk averse, that's pretty frightening, and clearly makes the case for needing to find vulnerabilities and rapidly remediate them at scale. Organizations clearly need to find ways to get more proactive about identifying vulnerabilities and patching them to reduce that intrusion risk. So what do you see are some of the key benefits that of integrating Falcon Exposure Management with automated patching solutions like One Site Patch, and how can it help organizations reduce that risk?
Yeah, I think you hit on a couple of important points there. The first of which is that the rate at which CVEs are being reported is going up and up and up and up. And so if you rely on highly manual systems to do that patching, you're never going to make a meaningful dent. Most companies don't even patch everything anyway. But if you don't have the ability to patch at scale, you're never going to kind of make a meaningful dent, right? And every day, every hour, every minute that a vulnerability is open and exposed gives that attacker a larger window to get into. And when we think about what that cycle looks like, we think of it in 4 phases. We think about discovering all the assets that you have, assessing them for the various vulnerabilities and risks that are on them, prioritizing them, which we talked about a little bit earlier, and then remediating them. If you do the first 3 and you don't do the 4th, all the work you've done up until then is not really any good. And so the more tightly integrated you are with a system that's going to make that patching happen more quickly, the more secure you're going to be, because the window for the attacker is going to be smaller. And the smaller the window, the lower the risk.
Absolutely. I know sometimes when patches go awry, people's gut reaction is to slow down their patching process. But with the rate at which you're talking about vulnerabilities increasing, we need to continue to move faster to keep those risks down, but fast with controls that allow you to make sure that you can automate your patching quickly, but you're doing it in a safe and secure way. I know that CrowdStrike's mission is to stop breaches. How do you see this partnership aligning with CrowdStrike's mission?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that CrowdStrikers think about every day. We come into work and we think about stopping breaches, and it's not just words, right? We're always thinking about that work. And when you think about stopping breaches, there's kind of 2 sides to that coin. There's the proactive side, and that's where exposure management lives, right? Our goal is to identify the most important vulnerabilities so that you can then get to work patching them, closing or limiting that window for the attacker. And the great thing about our platform is that it then is paired with a world-class real-time security element, so that anything that does get through that first layer of proactive defense, CrowdStrike has you covered if and when that's going to happen.
It's great. Well, on behalf of the team at Adaptiva, I just want to reiterate how much we value this partnership. I encourage everyone watching today to kind of do 3 things. The first would be to visit the Adaptiva website to learn more about One Site Patch for CrowdStrike, the product, get a demo, see it in action. The second is we'll be exhibiting and speaking at your upcoming Falcon events in Las Vegas and in Amsterdam in Europe later this year. Would encourage people to attend those, to come stop by the booth and see the product. We'll be previewing not only the ability to do Windows OS and third-party patching, but also Mac and Linux support at that event in the cloud. And then third would be to visit the CrowdStrike marketplace, where you can actually purchase this product through the marketplace and learn more about it. So lots of different options there to see it in action and learn more and even buy. Well, thanks again for joining us today, Michael. Really enjoyed hearing about the product, and again, really value the partnership.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you again.